If you know your podcast has great content, but your downloads aren't growing and nobody's sharing your show, and you're starting to wonder, is anybody actually listening? This episode is for you. I have got fellow podcast host Krissy Bold in the studio with me, who launched a parenting podcast with a very confusing name, hour-long interviews that nobody finished, and a message that wasn't landing with her audience. But then she made a few key shifts. And she went out and relaunched her podcast, hit number 3 on the parenting charts, stayed there for more than a week, and she's been ranking in the top 20 ever since. What changed? Well, that's exactly what we are unpacking inside this episode. And we're going to show you how you can apply this to your show as well, so that you can turn a podcast that isn't working into one that people can't stop talking about. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. Krissy, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be talking to you, Courtney. This has been so much fun to launch a podcast and work with the pod launch team and really get a chance now to chat with you about the whole process.
Yes, well, I can't wait to unpack it because witnessing your journey just in the last few short months has been nothing short of incredible. I'm curious, for those that are just learning about you for the first time, tell them a little bit about you and what your podcast is about.
Absolutely. So my podcast is called Mom's Guide to Finding Herself, and it's pretty much exactly how it sounds. It's for moms who have had kids recently or maybe not so recently and don't know who they are as a person anymore since having those kids. They have lost that sense of individuality and they don't really know where to start. And this podcast, first of all, normalizes that because it's not just something that's common. It's a very normal process of becoming a mom. But it also shows you that there's ways that you can reconnect with your joy and reconnect with yourself. And they're more realistic than you think. So it speaks to both ends of that.
Yes. Well, I love that. And I love how clear that message is. And also what's really fascinating is that when we first met, that message was not coming through as clearly with your podcast. So can you take us back in time a little bit and paint the picture for us of the podcast that you had started before our paths had crossed?
Absolutely. So I had always joked with my sisters about starting a podcast. We would say things like, oh, that'll be on the pod, or that'll be a good segment for that. And it was something I always wanted to do outside of the joke, but I didn't really know how. And with so many things in life, we can keep waiting for the right time and we can keep waiting for the big idea. And I decided, you know what? I'm just going to start. I'm just going to do it dirty and it's not the right thing and we're going to make it happen. So I bought, less than $100 worth of equipment, which is what I'm still using. It works and it sounds pretty good. And I came up with a name that wasn't really the right name, but it was a name, the Bold Little Minds Momcast. And I just started interviewing moms and hearing about their stories, mostly my friends. And then I started branching out. And I knew that it didn't necessarily fit for the long term, but it helped me to plan what I liked. It helped me to see what was fitting, what was resonating with my small audience. Get some of those interview jitters out of the way, some of those really bad episodes that you're going to come across, and the cringy moments here and there. I'm sure I still have them and will for a while, but it helped get that out of the way. So that way, when I felt like, yes, this is actually something I want to do, because that's another thing I believe in. We need to give ourselves room to try things and quit, because quitting is okay. Once I decided that this is something I actually wanted to stick with, I knew where I wanted to take it.
Oh, there's so much that you said right there. And I'm so excited to get into your launch results and unpack all of that. But before we do, what you just said about the practice, you knew that maybe this wasn't the forever thing, but you did it anyway. You started it messy and you just rolled up your sleeves and got to work. And I know for me, as a recovering perfectionist, that has been one of the hardest things for me to ever do through the years. I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum where I'm like, I want to have everything perfect and it needs to go out super polished where it looks like I've been doing this forever. And, I've come a long way since then. But I remember thinking back to starting my podcast, that is where I was. And so I know we've got both people on both ends of the spectrum listening, and that hearing this can be really refreshing no matter what end of the spectrum that you fall on. Because when you start a podcast, there is this deeper fear that, oh my gosh, what if I put this out and it is messy and it is awkward and it is maybe not perfect, and people hear that and then they think XYZ about me, my business, my brand, so on and so forth. And our minds just unconsciously spiral downward. And so what you just said though was it gave you the practice and it gave you the sandbox in order to get in and actually just be able to start testing some things and figure out what you liked and didn't. And then your point about permission to quit. If I really don't like this, that I can put this on the shelf It's not a huge loss, a little bit of equipment expense, a little bit of time. And at least you will have known that it wasn't the thing for you. So when you had that turning point in that pivotal moment, when did you know, okay, this is the thing that I want to do? And then what did you feel like was the gap from where you were to where you ultimately wanted to be?
Yeah. So the moments for me that showed me that this is something I wanted to stick with was one, it was fun. It never started to feel like a chore. Sure, there were pieces of it that did, but overall, it brought me joy. So I knew I wanted to keep with it. And then number two, people were liking it. I was hearing from my audience that, wow, that really stuck with me. Wow, I really love what you're doing. But I knew I wasn't going to grow because I didn't have a golden thread, something that tied everything together. I was doing these hour-long interviews that I didn't know how to break up, and people weren't listening to a full hour. That's not the right fit for my audience, but I couldn't decide what the thing was that I wanted to use to narrow it down. So I needed help with my messaging. I needed help with figuring out, who am I really speaking to? What am I really trying to pull out of these stories? Because the stories are all incredible and they all have so many pieces. But what's the thing that's going to keep people coming back to the next story or the next piece? And I thought I was going to be an interview show. But after working with the pod launch team, I was realizing exactly what my messaging was going to be, exactly the problems I wanted to solve. And I thought, there's a piece of this that I can add, that I can put in. So my solo episodes have really started to help me establish my expertise and have established the pieces of now a growing business that I did not have before, that have helped me to reach a larger audience and make that connection to me, because an interview show, you can only go so far with you. Yes, there's multiple pieces of information. Every guest is interesting. But as a host, you need to have that piece that makes people want to keep listening to you. And the messaging part that I really dove into, laying this foundational thing, doing the hard work, really made a difference for creating a podcast that I knew I could grow.
Yeah. And I want to pause on that note because it's easy to talk about results. It's easy to talk about wins. It's easy to talk about things when things are good, but it's also hard to dig back and pull back the curtain and really share transparently that sometimes it's really messy before it's good. But in doing that work, in slowing down to go fast, essentially, that now we can begin to accelerate the process. Now you've got that clarity. And it's amazing, Krissy, because I remember whenever you and I first sat down, this is before you even were like, yes, I'm in, I want to work with you guys. The difference in how you communicate about your podcast then versus now is very evident. It's very evident. And there's this calm clarity about the way in which you're showing up now, that having that clarity and doing that work has brought to light. So we're going to get into the results, but I wanted to highlight that piece as well, because it is such an important part of the journey, but it's the part nobody sees. And it's the part that's not glamorous and it's not sexy, and that we don't often get like external validation or quote unquote ROI or rewarded for, but it is the foundational piece that we need in order to get those things, the people that love the podcast and the people that leave reviews and, any money or revenue that might come in from the podcast down the road. So take us through your launch. Take us through what that was like for you and give us the overview, give us the results. And then I want to unpack a few pieces of your launch journey specifically.
Yes. So I decided to launch with 11 episodes. Originally it was 10, and then I added an intro episode, and I didn't want to cut any of the other 10. It was a good lineup. I had one intro episode, 6 episodes that were specific to the foundation of my topic, and then 2 guests that were broken up into 2 different interviews apiece. So 4 guest interviews. And that gave people a nice overview of what this podcast is going to look like. It's going to be a lot of me, a little of other people, and a nice balance. So no matter where you jumped in, whether you chose to listen to all 11, which I hope that people did, or maybe you just did a sampling of what you thought would be nice, or clicked on the titles that sounded the best, you would get an idea of what you're going to sign on for and hopefully want to keep listening. So I did that, and having this overarching thread, this golden thread that went through that I really worked on hard, helped me to decide what the content was going to be. I had a couple of episodes lined up that, as I was reviewing them, I said, this is interesting. I want to hear this, but it doesn't add to the theme. It was a good episode, and I'll probably use it at some point, maybe over the summer where things slow down, or a sick week, something like that, when the kids really need me. but it wasn't a launch episode. And that really helped to decide this golden lineup. So once I decided on that, I had my launch date. And about a month before, I started reaching out to just my immediate community, putting together a launch team where I did a waiting list and a Facebook group. I don't know how much I liked the Facebook group, but it was there. I had it. And for every Monday, for those 4 Mondays, I gave a cup of coffee to a member of my launch group who recommended people who joined. And that was a really nice ad. It was $5 for me, and it was a great builder for my community. About 2 weeks out, I started really posting on my stories and getting my semi-larger community in. And that's also when I started planning a launch party. So I partnered with a local play place because that's where the moms want to be. Or maybe they don't want to be there. I shouldn't say that, but they're going to. They're going to be there. So I started partnering with a local party play place who I had a relationship with. I had done events with them before, and I had a relationship with the owner. So we planned this event and planned an evening event. It was free for families. But once we had that going, I was able to advertise the event. Now, one thing you'll see is on Facebook groups, they don't want you to advertise, and rightfully so. I don't want to see all these different companies all the time in my toddler parenting support group. I want to see information about parents. So planning a free family fun event allowed me to inadvertently, to kind of sneaky in my advertising for my podcast to my local community by advertising the event. Now, that was for about 2 weeks. I was planning that. I didn't do a huge push until the day I launched, because when you post on your Facebook page to your uncle in Florida and they see that you're coming out with a podcast, their brain is going to say, oh, I supported you. That sounds really cool. And then on launch day, when they see that, oh, I've launched it, it's here, here's what you can do, their brain says, I already did. I already supported them. So launch day, I waited and I posted everywhere under the sun, texted everybody I'd ever met. I hadn't warmed them up. I hadn't prepped them, but I told them exactly what they could do then when they were the most excited, the peak excited. And then I just kept going from there. So the podcast started to chart. And I stalked those charts. I did. And I was riding that momentum. The minute I saw that the podcast was getting close to Sesame Street on the charts, I was texting everybody that I knew, saying that specifically. Can we be bigger than Big Bird? I was posting stories, reels, everything. And that got this larger community more interested in supporting me. They wanted to be a part of the success. And as it started getting higher and higher, I was posting more and more. I'm sure there were people who got sick of seeing me, but there were others, and clearly more so than not, who were just in it. They were probably watching to see when the next update was going to come in. And at that point, I know that people that were in my wider circle were then getting their mom's phones and their neighbors' phones, and they were helping people where, as before, they might not have when they first saw that text. So getting that momentum and then taking advantage of it and sharing your excitement made a huge difference.
Yeah, well, I wrote down literally here in my notes, your energy. And this is so key because, if you're listening right now, chances are you're familiar with a launch, whether it's a podcast or a book or a course or whatever it is, especially for us as online business owners, we've likely launched something. And you hear in business circles, your energy is really everything. And no matter how woo you are or not, it doesn't matter. How we show up does have an impact. That's the bottom line. And if we show up with a lot of doubt or fear or hesitation, or I don't know if this is going to work, or can you please help me? But I feel like I'm bothering you, but please, can you help me? Right? Like that energy is going to come through. Or if you show up where you're like, oh my gosh, like we're doing this. Here's what we're doing. I would love to have your help. Do you know a mom who could use this podcast? And that was how you approached it. I think it's really smart too, because, back when we first designed Pod Launch and what actually the entirety of what you know as Pod Launch now really originated around this launch plan, Facebook groups were a big thing, right? And they're not anymore. Mm-hmm. And so this is why I love the outside the boxness of the way that you approach this launch, where it's like, you know what, I'm also going to rally people in my local community. Yeah. And of course, friends and family and contacts and acquaintances and people that you know and all of the circles that you belong to. But your energy was what drove that. Mm-hmm. And I remember you were tagging me in stories and I was actually on vacation following your launch because I was like, oh, Krissy, this is amazing. And the way that you kept presenting it to your audience and kept making it about your audience made it engaging. So Beautiful job there, the way that you did that. And I want to also unpack this live launch event because I think this was a really unique take that you brought to the launch experience. And that for you podcasting right now, listening to this, or if you're thinking of launching a podcast, so often we make it harder than we need to be, kind of like create this monster in our mind of all the things and the checklist of things we need to do to grow the show. Whereas what you did was you were like, where are my people already hanging out? I'm very clear on who this is for. And that's the messaging piece. That's that foundational piece like we talked about. But now how can I get it in front of those people? Because that is going to be the fastest path to growth at whatever stage you are in your podcasting journey. So you saw that, you seized that, and you took that right into your launch with you. So let's unpack that event. How was that received? Did people love it? Were they really engaged at that event? Did it go as well as you thought? Take us through what that experience was like.
It was so good. Now, don't get me wrong. I still boosted my Instagram posts and I still did all that because there is a global community, but we're tired of it. We're tired of seeing the faceless posts and we're tired of the influencers. And that only takes you so far. What really makes an impact now is knowing people. I tell everybody who comes to me asking about what they might want to start local. Start talking to people in real life and making connections. And sometimes that is through DMs and sending messages. So if you want to post in Facebook groups, make connections with those admins, email them, tell them what you're doing and talk to them. Go out there with an attitude of service. I want to help solve your problem, not I want to pitch my podcast, and then the rest will come. So planning this live event was with that in mind. I wanted to do something for the community that would show them what value I can bring and then have them care. Okay, this is what you can do for me. This is interesting. I need this. Where can I find you? So they come and they return and ask you about it. Obviously, I was doing a little more pushing than allowing for asking in this particular case. But in general, that's my philosophy. So for the live event, I planned a vendor night out, a family night out. So we asked small businesses who are businesses geared towards families. We had a woman who sells sensory kits for kids and somebody else who sells cake pops and somebody who's a travel agent and a photographer, and then local community organizations. So the local United Way early childhood sector came and had a booth. So not just businesses, but people who you can then network with even more and expand. So that was key. They rented booths because they were going to be bringing in income. So that paid for the vendor fee, that paid for the event venue. This cost me nothing. And they all contributed a gift to a giveaway, which is very common in a vendor event. The table fees were very low, so this was exciting for the vendors. Parents came because it was now free. It was basically, we paid the birthday party fee to rent the venue. And the giveaway items was my ticket to talking to people. So as people were coming in, I was right there with all the giveaways with my QR code and my poster. And as they're taking off their shoes, because if you've ever gone to a play place, there's this funnel where you're at the doorway and everyone has to take off their shoes and come in. And I would say, when you have a minute while your kids are playing, come on by to scan the QR code to download or to enter the giveaway. All you have to do is follow my podcast, Mom's Guide to Finding Herself, download the first 11 episodes. I'll show you how to do it. I'll even do it for you if you want to give me my phone, and just leave a quick review. And people were like, oh, you have a podcast. This is really interesting. Tell me about it. Even some of the fathers that were coming in were saying to their wives, wow, this is something you need to listen to. Wow, you needed this. You really were struggling for a long time. So this let me not just pitch my podcast, but also start a conversation, also start building these connections. And now the people who are all coming wanted to share the podcast as well. And I was able to share with them. Right now we're at 51 on the charts. I'm hoping that we can break the top 50 before we leave. And I'm on my iPad checking it every half hour to see if we had any movement. And it was so fun. I really think that giveaway, and I did a separate giveaway online. So these were two different things. This was exclusive for the live event. The giveaway and that entryway wasn't just oh, this is fun, I'll support you. There was now a motivator to do it. And then there was motivation to share with their friends too.
And tapping into that power of reciprocity, which we all have inherently within us. You created this amazing event for free for families, had tons of vendors there to support them, a fun night out for the kids, and maybe a little bit for the parents too, in some degree. I know for many of us, we're crawling through the slides with the kids, in our socks, but been there. But also it was an opening, a doorway into opening those conversations with your podcast, for your podcast, in front of your right fit listeners. So beautifully executed. Now, I know everyone listening is on the edge of their seats. Did you pass Big Bird?
I sure did. Not only did I pass Big Bird, but I passed Blippi, I passed Mary Poppins, I passed Super Simple Songs. Every name you can think of, I passed except for Dr. Becky and the Calm Parenting Podcast. I landed at number 3 on the parenting charts and number 8 on the broader kids and family charts, which is, I never even dreamt of breaking the top 100 of kids and family, because that is packed with every kid podcast under the sun. I mean, I beat Paw Patrol, I beat Frozen. So I was on top of the world, and I'm still ranking with each new episode. I think last week I was at number 17. So it's still up there. It's still getting the traction, but it all started with these small conversations and building it locally. Now I went to a book group and somebody saw me and they said, "Hey, you're the one with the podcast. I think I know you." And now everybody at the table is saying, "Oh, you have a podcast. Tell me about it." It makes a difference to start building relationships.
Yeah, it really does. And it is a slow game. You have to go into it with that mindset. You're not just there to build a relationship to get the person to like your podcast and listen. Like, that's not the right approach. But it is genuinely about pouring into others. And I know for many of us, especially as a business owner, look, I'm guilty of this. It's challenging because it's like, well, I've got limited time on my calendar. If that's going to bring me a more immediate ROI, well, I'd rather do that than that, right? Like go to some kind of event, like chat with people, right? But at the end of the day, that is the thing that will bring the momentum. It's a much longer play. But when you have that vision in mind, and like you said, showing up to serve. And it's such an easy thing for us to forget, not just in podcasting, but in every area of business, because at the end of the day, businesses do need to make money in order to be self-sustaining, in order to grow, and all of that. All of that's important. And also, I do think that we often overlook some of the opportunities and the low-hanging fruit that's literally right there when you know who you're speaking to. And having that clarity and finding that golden thread and having that through line and now having the podcast and the message in order to be able to share that people are genuinely connecting with. And I know for a fact that you got some DMs from some pretty big people that are now coming onto your podcast that were reaching out to you. Take us through what that was like as well, to see those kind of popping up in your messages as your show was climbing the charts and has been continuing to rank.
Yes. So I started tagging all of the people that I was near on the charts. And the first message that I really got was from Michelle Grosser of the Calm Mom podcast. And when you're making a podcast, you'll put your picture next to other ones in the rankings. And I was always near her in that picture. So in my mental vision board, I would be seeing myself surpassing Michelle Grosser. And when she sent me a voice note of that day of saying, "Wow, congratulations," that's when it hit me. Because even still, seeing your face on an iPad, it's cool. But it's also technological. It's not real in so many ways. So when you hear somebody's voice that you've listened to before telling you congratulations, that's when it hit me. The Holderness family, if you've ever seen their videos, they're hilarious. If you haven't, they do parody videos about parenting in real life. They were sending me congratulations messages. And you forget that these are real people too. And then to have real people who you imagine aren't real people telling you congratulations, it shows you, wow, I made something that is making a difference. We as a community are showing the world that moms are not bad or weird or alone for wanting to know who they are other than mom.
Well, Krissy, let's drop the mic right there, because the work you were doing in the world is powerful. It is crystal clear now, and it just shows all the results, all the success, and not just that, but the growth that you've had along the way, the growth that is often invisible, the growth that happens behind the scenes in order for the visible growth to happen. You've done that work. It has been an honor just to be some small part of your journey, and I can't wait to see what you do next with your show and in the world.
Thank you so much, Courtney. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this and to be chatting with you today.
And if you're listening to this and you're like, dang, I want those kind of results from my podcast, then go hit the link in the show notes, book a call with my team, and let's see how Podlunch can help you too. And then stay right where you are, because in the next episode, I am answering a listener question about where should your podcast live online? Should you add your podcast to your existing website? Or should it have its own website and its own domain name? Because the truth is, where you host your podcast online, what you include or don't on your podcast website, it all matters more than you think, especially if you want to get found organically in search engines. So in the next episode, I'm going to show you exactly what you need and exactly what to avoid. All that is coming up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.